1550, we'll have a deal. It's yours.
Do you remember Rebecca Pritchard from Salvage Hunters? She was the calm, knowledgeable presence who always seemed steady, no matter what walked through the door. While the show went on for years and built a loyal audience, Rebecca's life quietly took turns that most viewers never saw coming. Today, Rebecca lives a very different life from the one viewers remember. Join us as we uncover what happened to Rebecca Pritchard and explore why her life today has left so many fans heartbroken. Early foundations. Rebecca Pritchard was born in the UK on February 19, 1958. Long before she appeared on television, she was already the kind of person who noticed what others missed. People who later watched her on Salvage Hunters often described her as calm and steady. But those qualities didn't just appear overnight. They were shaped early, through the way she looked at the world and the way she learned to trust her own judgment. As a child, Rebecca showed strong attention to detail. She didn't just look at an object and move on. She paid attention to how it was put together, what it was made from, and whether it felt well made. That kind of curiosity often shows up in kids who like building, fixing, or making things, but in her case, it also connected to taste and standards. She seemed to care about quality in a quiet, serious way. Not because she wanted to impress anyone, but because she genuinely found it interesting. Her education helped strengthen those instincts. While many people only learn about materials and design later in life, Rebecca had early exposure to the basics of quality, structure, and finish. She learned how to look closely, compare things, and spot small differences that matter. Over time, this became one of her strongest skills, being able to tell when something was carefully made and when it was just made to look good from a distance. These early habits also shaped her personality. Rebecca's natural style was calm, analytical, and observant. She wasn't loud or flashy, and she didn't rush to speak just to fill the silence. Instead, she listened, thought, and then spoke with purpose. That careful approach later became part of what people liked about her on screen. She didn't overreact or try to turn everything into a big moment. She stayed focused on facts, quality, and what made an item worth caring about. Just as important, Rebecca was never someone who chased attention. Even as her career grew, she didn't build her life around being seen. She seemed more interested in the work itself than the spotlight that could come with it. That preference for privacy helped her stay grounded, even when television later brought public curiosity into her life. Next up, how her first big career in fashion quietly trained her to judge value fast and accurately. A hidden training ground. Long before antiques and television, Rebecca Pritchard built her working life in fashion. It wasn't a short job or a side interest either. She spent close to 20 years in the industry, and those years became a quiet training ground for the skills people later saw on screen. Fashion taught her how to judge quality fast, how to stay calm when things go wrong, and how to make decisions that affect money, reputation, and deadlines. Rebecca worked across wholesale, retail, and manufacturing, which gave her a full view of how products move from idea to finished item. In wholesale, she learned how pricing works at scale and how businesses protect profit while still keeping standards high. In retail, she saw how customers react to design, finish, and brand reputation. That experience helped her understand what people actually value, not just what they say they value. In manufacturing, she got close to the real details: materials, stitching, structure, and consistency. That's where you learn what good really means, because you can't hide mistakes when items are being produced in volume. A big part of her career involved splitting her time between Hong Kong and the UK. Working across two places like that means constant coordination, clear communication, and a lot of problem solving. Different time zones, different work styles, and fast-changing demands can turn simple issues into stressful ones quickly. That environment forced Rebecca to be organized and direct while still staying respectful and professional. Over time, she developed key skills that later matched perfectly with antiques work. She learned supplier negotiation, which is about getting fair deals without damaging trust. She became strong at quality control, which means spotting flaws, checking standards, and knowing what can be fixed versus what should be rejected. She also built strong valuation instincts. In fashion, you're always asking, is this worth the cost? Will it sell? Is it made well enough to hold its price? Those same questions show up later when valuing antiques or restored pieces. Fashion also sharpened her judgment of authenticity and value. She learned to notice when something looked impressive but wasn't made well, and when something simple was actually high quality. She learned to focus on facts, materials, finish, build, and origin. But the industry is intense. Deadlines are tight, pressure is constant, and mistakes can be expensive. That kind of pace can wear you down mentally, even if you're good at the job. Even with success, Rebecca eventually chose to walk away, likely because she wanted work that felt more personal and lasting. Next, she makes a surprising switch that pulls her into restoring buildings and old craftsmanship, a radical shift. After spending nearly 2 decades in fashion, Rebecca Pritchard made a major change and moved into property development. On paper, it looks like a big leap, but it actually fits her personality. Fashion trained her to judge quality, spot problems early, and care about materials and finish. Property restoration needed those same skills, just on a bigger scale and with higher risks. Rebecca didn't focus on quick makeovers or trendy flips. She was drawn to older buildings that needed real care, especially neglected, historic, and sometimes listed properties. These were the kinds of places many people would avoid because they looked like too much work. But for Rebecca, that was part of the point. She liked bringing something back that still had value beneath the damage, and she respected the people who built it in the first place. The types of buildings she gravitated toward were often full of character and history. Old farmhouses, for example, can come with rough stonework, worn wood, uneven floors, and years of hidden repairs. Georgian homes can be beautiful but demanding, with original features that need to be protected rather than replaced. When you restore a place like that, you can't simply rip everything out and start over. You have to understand what should stay, what can be repaired, and what must be replaced for safety. Restoring older buildings also meant learning to deal with heritage rules and regulations. Listed buildings often have strict limits on what you can change, what materials you can use, and how the work is done. That adds time, paperwork, and pressure, especially when deadlines and budgets are involved. Rebecca had to be patient, organized, and very careful about decisions because the wrong choice could lead to delays or costly fixes. Then there are the surprises that come with old structures. Walls may hide damp, rot, or outdated wiring. Roofs may look fine until work begins and deeper problems appear. Foundations can shift over time, and repairs can reveal bigger issues than expected. These problems can't be planned perfectly, which creates financial uncertainty. Costs rise, timelines shift, and sometimes the plan has to change mid-project. Handling that takes calm thinking and strong judgment, especially when money is on the line. And this is right around the time her path crosses with Drew Pritchard, and everything starts moving toward television. Meeting Drew Pritchard. Somewhere along Rebecca Pritchard's path through restoration and design, she crossed paths with Drew Pritchard, an antiques dealer known for hunting down architectural salvage and unusual finds. The meeting mattered because their strengths lined up quickly. Rebecca had a careful eye and a strong sense of quality. Drew had drive, confidence, and the kind of bold energy that pushes deals forward. Together, they could look at the same object and cover both sides of the job. Drew could spot opportunity and move fast, while Rebecca could check details, judge condition, and make sure the item truly had value. From the start, their professional compatibility was clear. Drew's work depended on instinct, travel, and negotiation. Rebecca's skills fit naturally with that world because she was comfortable assessing materials, build quality, and finish, and she could think clearly under pressure. She also had the ability to slow things down when needed. If Drew was excited about a piece, Rebecca could ask the practical questions. What's it worth? What will it cost to restore? Is it authentic? Is there damage you can't see at first glance? That balance helped them make smarter decisions and avoid costly mistakes. Their personalities were very different, and that difference became part of what made them effective. Drew was known for taking risks, acting quickly, and trusting his gut. He liked the chase and seemed energized by the unknown. Rebecca, on the other hand, leaned toward structure and restraint. She preferred clear plans, careful choices, and steady progress. She didn't rush to speak, and she didn't get carried away by the moment. Instead, she stayed measured, which helped bring stability to fast-moving situations. In a business where it's easy to overpay or miss a flaw, her cautious approach could protect the bottom line. Over time, their partnership became personal as well. They married and built a shared life that blended work and home. For many couples, separating business from private life is already hard. For Rebecca and Drew, the two areas became deeply intertwined. Decisions about purchases, projects, travel, and long hours weren't just work choices. They shaped daily life, family time, and stress levels too. The birth of Salvage Hunters. Salvage Hunters first aired in 2011, and the idea was clear from the start. Follow antiques dealer Drew Pritchard as he traveled around the UK looking for interesting old pieces he could buy, restore, and resell. What made the show feel different, though, was that it wasn't only about the hunt. It also focused on what the items were, where they came from, and whether they were actually worth the money. That's where Rebecca Pritchard became essential. As the show came together, the role division felt natural because it matched how they already worked in real life. Drew handled the sourcing and negotiation. He would visit yards, warehouses, private cellars, and old buildings, looking for objects with potential. He moved fast, asked direct questions, and tried to get the best deal he could. He enjoyed the chase and wasn't afraid to take risks if he believed an item could sell. Rebecca's role was different, but just as important. She focused on valuation, history, and restoration insight. When Drew brought back a potential buy, Rebecca would help work out what it was really worth, what repairs it might need, and what details mattered most. She could explain why a piece was special, how old it likely was, and what signs showed quality or authenticity. She also helped connect objects to their wider story, which gave the show depth. That's why many viewers saw Rebecca as the intellectual backbone of the series. She didn't just react to what Drew found. She helped guide the viewer through the decision-making. Her calm, steady way of speaking made complex information feel easy to follow. She didn't sound showy or overly technical, and she didn't try to turn everything into a big dramatic moment. She focused on facts, condition, and craft. The contrast between her calm presence and Drew's energetic style became part of the show's appeal. Drew brought excitement and momentum. Rebecca brought balance and clear thinking. Together, they created a rhythm that felt natural. It didn't feel like forced TV chemistry. It felt like two people who actually knew what they were doing. Audiences trusted Rebecca quickly because she came across as grounded and honest. When she said an item was overpriced, she didn't soften it for entertainment. When she liked something, she explained why in a simple way. That honesty helped the show feel authentic, especially compared to reality TV that relies on loud reactions or staged drama. Life behind the camera. On camera, Rebecca Pritchard always looked calm and in control, but the work behind the scenes could be intense. Her role wasn't just to appear in a few scenes and share opinions. A big part of her job was making fast, accurate judgments about objects that could cost a lot of money. In the antiques world, one wrong call can mean overpaying, misreading condition, or selling something later for less than expected. When filming is happening, those decisions often have to be made quickly, with people waiting for an answer. One of the biggest pressures was the constant need for fast valuations. When Drew brought back a possible buy, Rebecca had to consider several things at once: what the item really is, how old it might be, what condition it's in, whether it looks authentic, and what the market might pay for it. She also had to think about restoration costs. A piece can look great in the moment, but if it needs expensive repair or missing parts are hard to replace, the profit can disappear fast. Doing that kind of thinking on the spot takes focus. Prep time could be limited too. The show moved quickly, often jumping from one location to another, and the items weren't always predictable. That meant Rebecca couldn't always research every object in advance. She had to rely on her experience and instincts, and she had little room for hesitation. If she was unsure, it could affect the flow of filming, and if she was wrong, it could affect the business side later. She also had to balance historical accuracy with the pace of television. Good antiques research can take time, You normally want to check marks, compare details, confirm dates, and sometimes look into where something came from. But a TV shoot needs clear, simple explanations that fit into short scenes. Rebecca had to be careful not to say anything misleading while also keeping it easy for viewers to follow. That's a tricky line to walk, especially when producers want scenes to move along. Over time, that kind of work can be mentally exhausting. Viewers didn't see the constant decision-making, the pressure to stay sharp, or the weight of knowing that mistakes could cost money and credibility. And filming wasn't her only responsibility. She was also involved in restoration work outside the show, where there were real financial and creative pressures. Restoring old buildings or pieces can bring surprise costs, delays, and difficult choices about what to preserve and what to replace. Next, we'll move into how that pressure started showing up in their personal life too. Marriage under strain. Working closely with a spouse can be challenging under the best circumstances. For Rebecca and Drew Pritchard, work and marriage were tightly linked. They didn't just share a home, they shared decisions, deadlines, financial risks, travel, and the pressure of running a business that was always in motion. When you spend nearly every day together in high-pressure situations, there's very little space to step back and reset. One of the biggest challenges was how differently they handled stress and decision-making. Drew was known for moving quickly and trusting his instincts. He liked action and momentum, even when outcomes weren't fully clear. Rebecca approached things more carefully. She preferred to think decisions through, consider long-term consequences, and avoid unnecessary risk. Professionally, this balance often worked well. Privately, it could be harder. When stress builds, differences that once felt useful can start to feel frustrating instead. As Salvage Hunters grew more popular, their schedule became heavier. Filming meant long days, travel across the country, and constant changes. On top of that, there was still the antiques business to manage and restoration projects that didn't stop just because cameras were rolling. At home, they were also raising a family. Balancing parenting with work like this requires patience and clear boundaries, and those boundaries can be hard to protect when everything is connected. Over time, rumors began to circulate that things weren't always smooth behind closed doors. Nothing was ever confirmed publicly, and Rebecca in particular stayed completely silent. Still, people close to the antiques world noticed tension. When couples work together this closely, small disagreements don't stay small for long. Decisions about money, travel, time away from home, and risk can quickly turn personal, especially when there's no clear line between business and marriage. And soon, the strain that stayed hidden for years would begin to surface in ways no one expected. Scandals and rumors. As Salvage Hunters became more popular, attention around Rebecca and Drew's private lives slowly increased. In small communities like Conway and across parts of North Wales, rumors tend to travel fast, especially when the people involved are recognizable faces on television. Over time, talk began to circulate about problems in their marriage, even though nothing had been said publicly by either of them. Much of the gossip focused on allegations surrounding Drew Pritchard's personal life. Stories suggested that he had been involved in relationships outside his marriage while still with Rebecca. These claims were never confirmed by Rebecca, and Drew rarely addressed them directly, but the rumors were persistent enough to attract local media attention. For Rebecca, this meant that deeply personal matters were being discussed openly by people who had no real insight into her private life. One incident in particular drew wider attention. Reports emerged about a confrontation at the Liverpool Arms pub involving a man named Janice Thomas. According to local coverage at the time, Thomas confronted Drew after discovering that Drew had allegedly been involved with his wife. Witnesses claimed the situation escalated, with reports of taunting messages and a physical altercation. The details were unclear, and different versions of the story circulated, which only fueled speculation. Later reports suggested Thomas faced legal consequences and was banned from local pubs, but neither side ever publicly clarified what truly happened. As media outlets picked up the story, community gossip grew louder. In a small town, situations like this rarely stay private for long. Yet, through all of it, Rebecca remained completely silent. She didn't release statements, didn't give interviews, and didn't respond to rumors in any visible way. While many public figures rushed to defend themselves or explain their side, Rebecca chose the opposite approach. But while she kept everything composed on the surface, the strain behind the scenes was building toward a breaking point that would soon change everything: the quiet collapse. By the time news broke that Rebecca and Drew Pritchard had separated and finalized their divorce in 2017, most fans were completely caught off guard. There had been no public signs of a breakdown, no dramatic shifts on screen, and no statements hinting that their marriage was in trouble. To viewers, they still looked like the same steady team they had always been, which made the confirmation of their split feel sudden and unexpected. What stood out most was how quietly everything happened. There were no interviews, no press releases, and no posts on social media explaining what went wrong. In an age where many public figures feel pressured to share personal details, Rebecca chose not to say anything at all. Drew also kept public comments to a minimum. The marriage simply ended, without blame being placed or stories being told. That silence, however, didn't stop speculation. Media outlets and fans quickly connected the timing of the divorce to the rumors that had circulated earlier about Drew's alleged affairs. Articles and online discussions suggested infidelity may have played a role, but none of this was ever confirmed by Rebecca. She never addressed the claims, even when public curiosity was at its highest. Instead, she stayed consistent with how she had always handled private matters, by keeping them private. What made the situation even more emotionally complex was that the divorce didn't immediately end their professional relationship. For a period after their separation, Rebecca and Drew continued working together on Salvage Hunters. On camera, they remained polite, focused, and professional. To casual viewers, nothing seemed different, but working alongside an ex, especially one with whom you shared both a marriage and a business, carries a heavy emotional load. And while the divorce didn't cause an immediate break on screen, careful viewers soon began noticing subtle changes that hinted something deeper had shifted. Health concerns. As the years went on, longtime viewers began noticing a visible change in Rebecca Pritchard's appearance. It didn't happen all at once, but gradually, season by season, she appeared slimmer than before. For someone who had been on television for many years and always looked healthy and composed, the change stood out. Fans who had followed her from the beginning started to comment, not in a cruel or judgmental way, but with genuine concern. Most of the discussion online came from a place of care rather than gossip. Viewers asked if she was okay or if something had happened behind the scenes. Many people felt a connection to Rebecca because of her calm presence and honesty on screen. So, seeing her look noticeably thinner made them uneasy. It felt personal to them, as if they were worried about someone they had known for a long time. What made the situation more noticeable was the complete lack of explanation. Rebecca never addressed her weight loss publicly. There were no interviews, no posts, and no comments made during the show. Unlike many public figures who feel pressured to explain changes in their appearance, she chose to stay silent. This silence left room for speculation, but it also stayed true to how she had always handled her private life. Importantly, there has never been any confirmed report of a serious illness. No medical statements were released, and there were no reliable reports of hospital stays or health emergencies. Despite what some online discussions suggested, nothing concrete ever appeared to support claims of major health problems. In fact, several sources and fans pointed out that she continued working, attending events occasionally, and staying active. Because there was no clear answer, people began filling in the gaps themselves. Some believed the weight loss could be linked to stress. Considering everything Rebecca had gone through, including a public divorce, years of intense work, and constant scrutiny, that idea didn't seem far-fetched. Stress can affect appetite, routine, and overall well-being, especially over long periods of time. And not long after these concerns grew louder, viewers began noticing another major change: Rebecca's gradual step away from the show itself. Stepping away from Salvage Hunters. Rebecca Pritchard's exit from Salvage Hunters didn't happen all at once. Instead, fans began noticing small changes over time. She appeared less frequently in episodes, and when she did show up, her screen time was shorter. There was no announcement at first, no clear reason given. Viewers who had watched the show for years could sense something was shifting, even if they couldn't quite put their finger on it. Eventually, the change was confirmed in a quiet way. Quest TV shared a short "Goodbye Rebecca" post on social media. It featured clips from her time on the show and thanked her for her contribution. The message was respectful but brief. There were no details about why she was leaving, how long the decision had been planned, or what she would do next. For a figure who had been part of the show since the beginning, the simplicity of the farewell felt surprising. There was no farewell episode either, no final walkthrough, no reflective interview, and no on-screen goodbye. Rebecca left the show in the same way she lived much of her public life, quietly and without explanation. For some fans, that felt fitting. For others, it felt unfinished. After more than a decade of watching her explain antiques and guide decisions, many viewers expected at least a small on-air send-off. Her exit felt final because of how complete the break seemed. Rebecca didn't return for guest appearances, didn't comment publicly, and didn't hint at a comeback. Combined with her earlier reduced appearances and her private nature, it gave the sense that she had truly closed that chapter of her life. There was no slow transition into something else on screen. She simply stepped away. And not long after Rebecca's quiet departure, fans were surprised once again when Drew also chose to step away, signaling that the era people loved was truly over. Life after television. After stepping away from Salvage Hunters, Rebecca Pritchard didn't vanish from the antiques world. She simply moved out of the spotlight. For someone who always seemed more interested in the work than the attention, that change makes sense. Instead of being a regular face on TV, she appears to have shifted into quieter, behind-the-scenes work, where her knowledge still matters, but her personal life stays protected. Even without TV, Rebecca continues to be spoken about with respect in antiques circles. People who take antiques seriously tend to value calm expertise over loud opinions. Rebecca built a reputation for being steady, clear, and careful with details. That kind of reputation doesn't disappear just because someone stops filming. If anything, it can grow stronger when a person avoids drama and keeps their focus on the craft. Rebecca also seems to keep public appearances rare. From time to time, people claim to have seen her at fairs, events, or antiques-related spaces. When that happens, the descriptions are usually similar: friendly, calm, and approachable, but not interested in being treated like a celebrity. That's consistent with how she came across on television: present, professional, and focused. If you enjoyed this video and want more stories like this, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next.